Before we talk about age, or joints, or flexibility, it helps to pause and notice something quieter and more fundamental. The human body was never designed to be static. From the moment we are born, movement is how we learn who we are. An infant does not study balance or strength, they explore it. They rock, roll, reach, fall, and try again. Their nervous system learns through sensation and motion, not instruction. Over time though, many of us drift away from that natural dialogue with our bodies. We replace curiosity with caution, exploration with efficiency, movement with stillness. And then, years later, we are surprised when stiffness feels permanent and pain feels inevitable. In different parts of the world, aging unfolds differently, not because of genetics alone, but because of habits woven so deeply into daily life that they become invisible. When scientists look closely at older adults who move with ease, they often find no miracle supplements, no extreme training regimens, no heroic acts of discipline. Instead, they find something almost disappointing in its simplicity. Small, repeated movements performed consistently, often in moments of transition, especially before rest. The body responds not to intensity alone, but to rhythm, timing, and trust. At night, the human body enters a phase of profound repair. Hormones shift, body temperature drops slightly. The nervous system turns inward. Tissues that endured compression, tension and stress throughout the day finally receive permission to reorganize. This is not a passive process. Sleep is not simply absence of activity, it is active biological maintenance. Cells exchange fluids, waste products are cleared, and connective tissues subtly reshape themselves. Movement just before sleep acts as a signal, a gentle instruction to the body about how it should repair itself. One of the most underestimated systems involved in this nightly repair is the network of connective tissue that wraps around muscles, joints and organs. This tissue, often ignored until it hurts, is highly sensitive to slow, sustained movement. When we hold a position gently and breathe, the tissue responds by softening, hydrating, and reorganizing. This is not stretching in the aggressive sense many people imagine. It is more like negotiation. The nervous system needs time to decide that a position is safe. Once that decision is made, resistance melts away. Consider the act of sitting on the floor and folding forward, not as a test of flexibility, but as a conversation between gravity and the spine. When the spine is upright, it bears the weight of the day. When it folds gently, supported by breath and patience, pressure redistributes. The long muscles along the back of the legs and the lower spine, often shortened by chairs and cars, begin to release their habitual tension. Blood flow increases. Sensory receptors embedded in the tissue send updated information to the brain, informing it that range of motion exists here, that movement is allowed. This matters because pain is not just a mechanical signal. It is a perception shaped by the nervous system's expectations. When the body repeatedly experiences safe, slow movement, those expectations change. The brain reduces its protective guarding. Muscles that once resisted begin to cooperate. Over time, the boundary of comfort expands without force. This is why consistency matters more than depth. The body remembers what it does often, not what it does occasionally with effort. As the spine becomes more fluid, another quiet transformation takes place between the vertebrae. During the day, gravity compresses the discs that sit between each spinal bone. By evening, most people are measurably shorter than they were in the morning. Gentle movements that twist and rotate the spine allow these discs to rehydrate. Fluid moves back into spaces that were squeezed all day. This process is not dramatic, but it is cumulative. Night after night, the spine regains a little of its natural elasticity, and with it, the ease of turning, reaching, and breathing fully. Breathing itself deserves attention, because it is both voluntary and automatic, a bridge between conscious and unconscious processes. When movement is paired with slow breathing, especially into areas of stretch or compression, the effect is amplified. The ribs expand, small muscles between them release, and the diaphragm moves more freely. This does not only improve oxygen exchange, it stimulates the movement of lymph, a clear fluid responsible for clearing metabolic waste and inflammatory byproducts. Unlike blood, lymph does not have a central pump. It relies on muscle contraction, breathing, and gravity. When these elements work together, the internal environment becomes cleaner, quieter, less inflamed. On hands and knees, the spine can rediscover something it rarely experiences in adult life: segmented motion. Instead of moving as a rigid block, each vertebra begins to participate. As the spine rounds and arches slowly, fluid circulates around the spinal cord and brain. This fluid carries nutrients and removes waste, supporting cognitive clarity as well as physical comfort. Movement here is not about strength, it is about communication. Each wave through the spine is a reminder that flexibility is not a single attribute, but a collective agreement among many small parts. Balance, often feared as something that suddenly disappears with age, is deeply connected to this spinal and joint awareness. The brain relies on constant feedback from joints, muscles, and the inner ear to know where the body is in space. When joints stop moving through their full range, that feedback becomes fuzzy. Slow, deliberate movement sharpens it again. The result is not just better balance, but greater confidence. And confidence itself changes how the body moves, reducing the risk of falls more effectively than brute strength ever could. The lower joints of the body tell a similar story. Ankles and hips are designed for multi-directional movement, yet modern life often limits them to a narrow range. Walking alone, though beneficial, does not explore rotation, circles, or subtle shifts of angle. When these joints lose mobility, the body compensates elsewhere, often at the knees or lower back. Gentle circular movements restore forgotten pathways. Synovial fluid, the natural lubricant of joints, is produced in response to movement. The more varied the movement, the more evenly that fluid spreads. This fluid is not just lubrication, it is nourishment. Cartilage does not have its own blood supply. It depends on the movement of synovial fluid to receive nutrients and remove waste. When joints are still for long periods, cartilage starves quietly. Over years, this contributes to stiffness and degeneration. Nightly joint movement, especially before sleep, appears to prime the system for repair. During deep sleep, the body increases production of substances that support joint health. Movement beforehand tells the body where those resources are needed. One of the most striking examples of how position influences physiology is the simple act of elevating the legs. When the legs are raised above the heart, gravity assists the return of fluid that is pooled in the lower limbs throughout the day. Swelling decreases. Pressure in the joints eases. The lymphatic system, often sluggish in sedentary adults, suddenly has help. As fluid drains, inflammatory signals diminish. The body enters sleep with a quieter internal environment. Spinal decompression occurs here as well, with the pelvis tilts slightly, reducing pressure on the lower back. The spine elongates gently, discs absorb fluid. This is not traction in a mechanical sense, but a subtle invitation for space. The nervous system responds to this position toward parasympathetic dominance, the state associated with rest, digestion, and repair. Heart rate slows. Breathing deepens. Sleep becomes less fragmented. What is remarkable is not that these processes exist, but that they respond so readily to small changes. The body does not require extreme intervention to heal, it requires the right conditions. Time, consistency, and gentle signals often accomplish more than force. This challenges a cultural narrative that equates health with struggle. In reality, biology often favors cooperation over conquest. There is also a psychological dimension to these nightly rituals. When movement is framed not as exercise but as care, the relationship with the body changes. Instead of punishment for aging, movement becomes an act of respect. This mindset reduces stress, which itself has measurable effects on inflammation, immune function, and pain perception. The body listens not only to what we do, but to how we feel about what we do. Over weeks and months, these small practices compound. Flexibility improves not because muscles are forced to lengthen, but because the nervous system permits it. Pain decreases not because damage disappears overnight, but because tissues are better nourished, inflammation is reduced, and movement patterns become more efficient. Sleep deepens, and with better sleep comes better hormonal balance, improved mood, and clearer thinking. Perhaps the most profound lesson hidden in these observations is that aging is not a single trajectory. It is a collection of daily negotiations between biology and behavior. The body is adaptive far longer than we are often told. Even in later decades, tissues respond to input. Joints still produce fluid. Muscles still learn. The nervous system still rewires itself. What changes is not capacity but opportunity. When people move gently before sleep, they are not trying to reclaim youth. They are honoring the intelligence of their physiology. They are acknowledging that the body repairs itself best when it feels safe, supported, and listened to. This approach does not promise immortality or perfect health. It offers something quieter and more sustainable. The possibility of moving through life with less friction, more awareness, and a deeper sense of partnership with one's own body. And in that partnership, something subtle but meaningful occurs. The body stops being an obstacle and becomes an ally again. Movement becomes less about achievement and more about presence. Each breath, each small shift of weight, each gentle rotation becomes a reminder that health is not something we chase in the future, but something we cultivate in ordinary moments. especially when the day is ending and the body is preparing, once again, to rebuild itself in the dark.